morning, everybody. It is Thursday, January 15th. Welcome to the Greater Victoria Real Estate Show. I am here with...
Hey, everybody. It's Andrew Plank with the Vibe Collective and Roy LePage.
And...
Jen Lowe, mortgage broker, Dominion Lending Modern Mortgage Group.
And Katie Snell, Cunningham Rivard Appraisals.
Hey, everybody.
All right. Hey, and I'm Jane Johnston with the Briar Hill Group at Remax Camosun. I forgot to say that. Anyway, how's everybody's week gone? Good?
Great.
Pretty good. Yep.
Pretty good for me.
Yep. Good. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about BC assessments. We're going to compare and contrast so people understand the difference between assessment, appraisal, and market value. So we're going to jump right into it. So our guest is Katie Snell. She's with Cunningham and Rivard, and she used to work for BC Assessment, and then she moved to the appraisal side of the business. So I'm curious, first of all, how did you end up in working for BC Assessment? Like, what did you do to get there?
I did my commerce degree at UBC, majored in real estate, and I knew I didn't want to be a broker, but I liked the valuing portion of real estate. So I knew appraisal would be kind of the best fit for me. And in talking with professionals before I graduated, they said to try to get in with BC Assessment to start, because it's a good place to learn everything and get your appraisal education paid for, and then decide whether or not you want to stay and work for a Crown Corp, or if you want to go work privately.
And so how many people, like, how's it all organized? How many people, I know you work in different areas of the province, right? It's a
yeah. So I don't know how it's been about 12 years since I've been there, and they're always restructuring. But when I was there, I worked at the capital office. So we were in charge of the entire CRD, including like the Gulf Islands. And then there was a Central Island office, but I think now that there's just one island office.
They've amalgamated?
Yeah, I think they've amalgamated. Okay. And then there's the head office is just located at Uptown.
So Katie, how many staff members would you say were involved in just the CRD portion at the time?
There had probably been 15 or 20 appraisers doing different types of properties, and then probably about the same amount of admin staff. So yeah, probably like 30 people, I would say, in the capital office.
Okay.
So when they're looking at the assessed value of a property, meaning people in the corporation, the appraisers who work there, are they looking at what the valuation was previously and looking at, this is how I understand it, they then look at what permits have been filed at the local municipality, and then they're looking at improvements and adding that in local sales as well? Is that?
Yeah, exactly. And their date is July 1st of the preceding year, and that never changes. So, but yeah, each year they'll look at what, pull all the permits that have been registered through the various municipalities. And throughout the year, like, appraisers will do site visits, or they used to anyways. I'm not sure if they still do, depending on the size of the permit, to see what kind of construction's going on, and what kind of value added would be added to the property. And then they would also look at the market conditions and look at sales, and see, is the market up, down, the same, and then adjust their factors that way.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard that outside of any permits or records, let's say in an absence of any records, really just looking at what has that area done in terms on average have gone up or down. Is that kind of the?
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it's what's considered mass appraisal. So yeah, it's basically averages for that area, for a particular property type, versus more specific to a site-specific property valuation.
Okay. Yeah.
So
'Cause-
one of the things that we saw in Vancouver maybe a decade ago or 15 years ago was that appraisal value went up, and it's one of the reasons why they actually instituted the deferred payment of property taxes. So they were trying to justify. People had these small bungalows in the Lower Mainland, and they were valued at $1 million or $2 million, but obviously they weren't worth $1 million. The land was worth more. So I'm just wondering, but the appraisal came in and it was land. It's land plus house, right?
Yeah, so the assessment will be broken down into land improvements and then and provide an overall value.
Mhm.
How accurate do you think it is?
Sometimes it's spot on and sometimes it's not at all. It's just because it's law of averages. Some are going to be higher and some are going to be lower.
It's
Generally,
like saying the broken clock is even accurate twice.
yeah. So
I mean, it is an average. Yeah.
Yeah. So it is hard to say. I know that they aim to be within like 5% or so on the high or low side. But yeah, some can be skewed just because maybe their information of what the property has is not correct, or maybe a permit wasn't pulled, but they have done a lot of improvements to the property that somebody coming in to buy the property would recognize and value. So the assessment might not reflect that.
Yeah,
Is that an official piece, the 5%, or was that kind of a?
That's just generally. I think they're mandated by the Assessment Act, the BC Assessment Act, and I want to say it's like. Well, they usually try to aim between plus or minus 2%. I remember that you tried to get about within 98 to 102 of the market value, but I can't remember offhand what they're actually mandated to try to accomplish, but usually it's within like the 5 or 10% even.
Okay.
But yeah.
Thank you.
So one strategy that sellers do if they know their house is coming up for sale, and I actually came across this year, which is how part of this discussion all is coming about. But we're at a time of year, it's January, the BC assessments are coming out. This guy realized he was coming up for sale, so he has this period to appeal within the next few months. He has to file it. I think it's by the end of February, right?
You have to file your appeal by the end of January.
End of January.
But the actual appeal, like your day in court, would be between February 1st and March 15th.
Right. So they can provide you with an amended tax amount you're going to be taxed for.
Yeah. So yeah, if you go through the appeal process and you've proven that the assessment is incorrect and beyond kind of like a reasonable threshold, so probably beyond that 5% plus or minus 5%, then the Property Assessment Review Panel, called PARP, they'll give an amended assessment, and so then it takes a little while for the municipalities because they do like a second roll kind of closer to tax by like June or May, and we'll give you an amended assessment, and so you'll be taxed on that amount versus what you're just assessed at on January 1.
So yeah, thank you. So Jane, what you were saying that most people want their assessment value to be low when they're an owner of that home and they're paying their taxes over the years, because the lower the assessment, the lower they pay relative taxes. But when it comes time to sell, they want to turn that around. They don't mind paying 1 year of extra high taxes if they can put their assessed value higher, because it doesn't change the value, objective value of their home, but it does change the perceived value of the home from a buyer looking at an assessed value, because nobody wants to pay $1 million for a home that's assessed for $800,000, even if all the other homes in the neighborhood are selling for 1.2, and this is a great deal at $1 million. Some reason that number is really important to those buyers.
Correct. And what happened was the gentleman got his house reassessed, I think at 1.5. So I'm looking at the assessment, I'm looking at all the sales in the neighborhood, and I'm trying to figure out why the assessment jumped from 1.2 to 1.5. And what happened was he appealed, and he had somebody come through, and he went through and talked about all the improvements he'd done. And to be honest, he put in a beautiful roof. He had a heat pump. He had high-end everything. But and the neighboring house that we saw was priced similarly, but he was priced based on the other property. So to me, anyway, they were both priced high. They haven't sold.
I was going to say, did it sell? That's the bottom line.
But the thing is sorry, go ahead.
I just had a client reach out this morning, timely question. They said, and it's because we're doing this topic today because the assessments have come out. So they reached out and said, hey, I did an evaluation for them a couple months ago. And they reached out to me and said, hey, our assessment has gone up pretty significantly. Does that change your valuation of our property? And I'm sure that's a lot of questions that a lot of people are going to have. And Jane is shaking her head. Katie is nodding her head.
Well, I get that all the time.
Yeah, you get that all. Okay, so you're nodding like you get that too. So, and the fact is as you said, these things come out. They're based on July 1st.
Yeah.
I did the assessment just a couple months ago. So my assessment came in at a number different from that, lower. But it was based on the comparable sales in the area at that time. The fact is the appraisal, the assessed value is actually more out of date than my evaluation. It's a few months out of date.
Jen, how do you reconcile this? Because I'm sure that people buy, especially when the market's going down. So if we look at evaluations, we look at BC assessments happened 6 months ago with an average between, is it May and October for July 1st of the previous year? So right now it's between 6 and 8 months old, right? And then we have an appraisal that looks at sold. So that's looked at properties that have sold probably within the last 30 to 60 days, if there are any. And then we have market evaluation, which is a realtor looking at a property that's for sale right now. So how as a lender do you reconcile those numbers to people when they come in and are trying to determine lending value at the bank?
Well, what's great is a lot of lenders have auto appraisal systems, which is through one of the insurers, CMHC. So if I usually in my notes when I'm submitting an application, if we want to try and avoid having getting an appraisal done, which is an additional cost to the client, I will note what the BC assessed value is for the property. It can work not necessarily in purchase situations, but in refinance situations where we're, what value we're trying to get out of that property per se. If I'm using the BC assessed value, quite often I'm able to avoid an appraisal with certain lenders.
Well, I know if somebody is maybe getting a divorce or there is maybe a probate happening on the property, they do look at BC assessed value because they want an easy number.
Yeah, it's a tag you can lay it to, and you can use that tag if you want to go back in the past and just follow that trend. It's just one marker, and it makes a lot more sense for someone refinancing because there's not a loss so much of, if you get it wrong, if you're off by 5%, nobody's really being damaged. The lender's probably still somewhat insulated. They're still going to get people paying their mortgage, all of that.
Katie, when you're doing appraisals, so you've moved from the analysis of properties 6 to 8 months ago, and now you're doing stuff that's for sale, I'm assuming, or refinancing right now. What's the process for you of doing that?
Yeah, so I'll go take a look, physically look at the property, do measurements, look at the neighborhood, and then look at the most recent sales in the immediate area. and that would be comparable to that specific property versus kind of the wider scope that a mass assessment would do. So and looking at the specifics of the property, like kind of quality of construction, condition, size, just location, proximity to amenities, all that kind of stuff.
And are you finding that it's close to assessed value, or is it off?
It totally depends on the property and the property type.
Yes.
It's really hard to say. Sometimes they're spot on, but sometimes they're not at all. So
this goes back to what you were saying earlier, Katie, because I've had this before with clients who've said, oh, I'm hearing that housing prices are on average 2% higher than appraised value or something like that. And that's fine. It's fine if that's the average 2%. But when they're trying to say then my property is valued to 2% above assessed value, that doesn't wash, because we're talking about an average, and their home may not be the average of that average. They
exactly.
could be
And
well high,
they may be better.
Yeah, it could be better. Yeah.
The way I like to describe it is you have two houses that were built in 2004, and one's had a lot of upgrades done. And so it increases in value. And if it sells before this one gets a bigger mark.
There's more weight
tax
given
assessment.
to, yeah.
But if this one sells first, it actually brings the value of the nicer home down, because it's the average of what the sales are.
Yeah. But to BC assessment, those two homes, let's see, neither had sold, but you're looking at two homes that were built at the same time. They're next door to each other. They're the same floor plan, but one has original windows, original roof, all original heating, and nothing has been updated. In fact, it's been let go and the yard is in disrepair. The house is in disrepair, versus the one that's been fully fixed up, but without permits. There's no records. To BC assessment, correct me if I'm wrong, Katie, but to BC assessment, those two properties are the exact same property.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they don't have enough people power to go and look at every piece of property in the province. So, so they have to look at it at a kind of more of a macro level and just, law of averages. And that's the big thing, is a lot of people don't get permits per se, for maybe a kitchen update or something like that. So BC assessment records might not recognize that one property has had significant renovations done, whereas the other one is all original.
Right.
And without them selling, either one selling, then BC assessment has no idea what's going on behind the closed doors, kind of thing.
Yeah, and the irony of assessment, appraisal, and everything is that what actually is going to increase your tax assessment is going to be things like structural things, plumbing, wiring, all of those core things that people can't see. Yeah. But what affects your market value is an updated color paint on the exterior and a roof that looks newer, and the kitchen's upgraded, which you don't need permits for.
Yeah.
And it's also unfortunate that, you invest in your home with some of these core really important pieces, like updating your wiring or plumbing or a new roof or whatever it is updating things that are positives to the house means you're going to be paying more taxes. So it's a double whammy. You're paying to do these improvements and you're paying more taxes, and yet you're still taking up the same amount of land as the house next door to you. Yeah. So there's some unfairness to this, I guess. Katie, you started to speak to this because you said when you do an appraisal, you physically go to the place, you take pictures, you walk through it. Do you want to highlight the contrasts? Because we were talking today about the difference between appraisals and assessments and market evaluations. So you can speak very clearly to those first two.
Yeah, so for an appraisal, like I'm going to look specifically at that property. And so say the property I'm appraising is in the two house scenario is the one that's been updated. So I'll look at the updated. So I'll look at sales that are in the immediate area. But I'll also, if there's limited data or there hasn't been a whole lot of sales, I'll also look at other sales that are maybe not necessarily in the same neighborhood, but similar in renovation and house style, and provide the same kind of amenities that a buyer would be looking at. So our research can expand, and we can adapt a little bit more than just the assessment, where they're just kind of going more for the immediate area. And we can kind of form our opinion based specifically for that one property versus kind of a general scope. So yeah, it's definitely more, I'd like to say accurate, because it's for that specific property. And it's a point in time. So it's usually the valuation date is usually the date of the site visit. So it's more it's current versus like 6-8 months ago. So it's always,
I have a question. Sorry. So let's say the completion is 4 months away. Do you do 2 appraisals, a current one for the approval to remove the conditions, and then do a subsequent one in 3.5 months to just make sure the property is still in the same condition?
That would be up to the lender, and it depends on what the market is doing. If the market is pretty stable and quiet, then the lender's probably not going to require an updated appraisal. However, like say in like 2021, when things were moving per day, basically changing, a lender may ask for an update or opinion letter saying like, is the value at least the same as it was 3 months ago, or does a new valuation need to take place? But generally speaking, when it's within 6 months, the lender, in my experience, the lender won't require another appraisal or an update.
Jen, do you want to speak to that? And you had a question as well.
Yeah, I was just in sort of diving into that a bit more. What trends you're seeing right now, if the market's kind of trending upwards, or where you're seeing those values coming in?
Yeah, like for me, it's been, or what I've seen is pretty stable. I've been doing mostly commercial real estate, so that it's been a little bit stable. Depending on what it is though, like industrial, there's been higher vacancies just because there's a whole lot of new construction that's just been finished, like in the West Shore. And rental rates are starting to go a little lower, just to fill the supply. Residentially, what I've seen is, again, pretty stable, and it depends on the property type. If it's an luxury home, then there might be more market movement, but if it's kind of a typical single family dwelling with maybe a suite in the core area, I think those are pretty desirable and are selling pretty fast. And I would say the sale prices are at their highest, or like relatively high. I haven't seen any major dips in that type of property.
Do you, as an appraiser, Katie, ever, because we're not speaking about these today necessarily, or at least not going to go in depth on them, but there's other ways of evaluating a property. One is cost of construction, the replacement cost. So if you were to build this home today, what would it cost? And then the other one is income. And that's from a commercial appraisal perspective, that's probably something you're looking into. Is that the case, or do you?
Yeah, exactly. So it depends on the property. So if it's just like a single family residential, typically we'll just do 2 approaches to value, which is the cost approach, and then the direct comparison approach. So yeah, the cost approach, we would first value the land as if vacant, and then add the cost of the construction of the improvements, and then depreciate depending on how old the structure is. And then the direct comparison would be, comparing it to other sales of similar type properties, and see how your subject property falls in line with those. Typically in a residential, a direct comparison approach is going to be the most supported valuation, and most recognized in the market, because just because somebody built basically a Taj Mahal doesn't mean the person wanting to buy the property is willing to pay what they paid to construct it. So usually the market value emphasis is usually placed on the direct comparison approach. And then if it's like an income producing property, say a multifamily property, a rental apartment, or a fourplex or something like that, we would do the cost approach direct comparison approach, and then also the income approach. So we'll look at the rents that the property is achieving, look at what market rents would be, and then deriving a capitalization rate to kind of derive an overall value. And typically for income producing properties, the income approach is kind of placed the most weight on by investors.
Right.
Right.
Want to make
Because
sure
they're
it's
looking
making
for
money.
ROI. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like especially for like multifamily, or like older multifamily buildings, because the Tenancy Act, you can't hike up the rents to market. You can only go probably 2 to 3% depending on whatever they set the threshold every year. A lot of long-term tenants, if you have a lot of long-term tenants, your income is going to be quite a bit lower than market. So an investor would want to know that and just see, okay, upon tenant turnover, like how much movement in value can I probably expect to be able to increase the rents to, and that sort of thing.
One counterintuitive, or one thing I've noticed in the past with clients that were looking for income properties, was they're more attracted to, they're attracted to the income. So they're more interested in buying a shack with high income than the Taj Mahal with low income.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, you're buying fundamentally land and structure, but they want to see the cash flow.
Yep.
So I find that really funny. Like, they would much rather buy a home that is not a great home, but it's got high
pit.
rent. I just think that that's a risk, because you might not continue to get that rent. Your future upside is much lower potential, but yeah,
it's mindset.
it is mindset. Yeah, money versus fundamental.
Well, and money in hand versus money that you could potentially get or lose, I guess, upon turnover.
Nobody wants a negative cash flow for an investment, but we've seen in Victoria that it is negative cash flow until you cash out and sell the property, and then the appreciation has been, very positive.
Worth it.
But
the juice is worth the squeeze.
So one thing that I find that we as realtors, when we do an evaluation, a market evaluation, is we're kind of discouraged from doing adjustments. This is a 1-car garage. This one we're comparing it to has a 2-car garage. This one is 1,400 square feet. This one's 1,600 square feet. We're going to make these adjustments, and we're going to actually put a number, dollar value to these adjustments. Appraisers have more granularity with the ability to do that, whereas realtors do it more, I would say, blurry, more amorphous.
Qualitatively, or?
Yeah, thank you.
It's more subjective, is what he's saying. We get a hunch.
Well, even with the appraisals, it can be, a lot of adjustments can be subjective. So ideally, if you are going to actually quantify an adjustment, you have, say, paired sales data where you have 2 houses that are all identical, except maybe one has the single garage and one has the double garage, and see what the change in value is. But a lot of the times we might not have that data. So I'm more hesitant to put a quantitative adjustment on appraisals. I typically will put a qualitative, say like the subject is inferior or superior in this regard, and then kind of look at the bigger picture of overall the subject is inferior or superior to this property, factoring in all the differences. But if you're going to quantify an adjustment, you better have the data to back it up in appraisals, and that can be tricky.
The one
Interestingly,
difference that we make. Oh, sorry, Jane, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I was just going to say, the one difference for us, our type of market evaluation than a appraisal, is we look at actual existing properties on market. You can't look at those because they're not a proven sale, but we're looking at those as this is information for our sellers to know how they're going to sit competitively with other properties on market. We also look at the trajectory of the market itself. Is it going up? Is it going down? Because we want to try to get ahead of that in our evaluation for giving advice to our clients. Whereas you're looking at a snapshot in time because the purpose for what you're doing this is different. But I just thinking that people do tend to slap all these kind of things together and think they're all equal evaluations, and they're different purposes.
I think if you were to look at a train, at the beginning of the train would be a realtor with what's happening right now, and they're in the current or in the moment. And then an appraisal would be slightly looking backwards, like maybe the first or second car. And then the BC appraisal is in the back. It's a caboose. So it's following the market. So if the market's going down, then your BC assessment's going to be higher. If the market's going up, the BC assessments is going to be lower. And same with appraisals, because they're looking at concretely what's sold. We're comparing and ranking with what's current.
I do I grab the HPI, the home price index graph, and I look at what it's done over time from, let's say, the last time that property was sold. And so you'll see the graph and you'll see a spike in 21, 22 kind of thing, or drops. And, and so what you can do, and what I'll do is I'll tag the July point for the appraisal. And so you'll see if the market's gone down or up since then. So when your client or your prospective seller is saying, well, our assessed value is this, I can say, well, your assessment was based on this particular time, and the market has done this since. So I just find it's a helpful one to say to them, look, this was a moment in time right here, and we're actually down since then, or we're actually up since then. So let's take that into account.
It also depends on what's sold, because recently there's been a lot of completions in Esquimalt that were purchased in 2022. And so they're all now showing up as just sold, and they're 2022 sales. So they affected the condo average last month.
Okay, yeah, because this would have to do with new construction, condos in particular, where there's a long time gap between it going out there on market, and the developers will sometimes, and the realtors will sometimes put these to MLS after the fact, just to get the record. So it's not a real representation of what happened.
Yeah, I think the easiest way to say is, if you're going to, when our BC assessment appraisal and a realtor's market evaluation going to be the same, and that's new construction. That's like somebody's building a house, one house done, and it's like within 8 months everything is done, and you have your new house, and they're all going to be the same. But as you go over time and who's done the work and who's maintained or not, that's when you're going to see the range for the same product. Okay, well, thank you, Katie. I really enjoyed this conversation. Anybody else want to ask another question?
Just really appreciate you coming on, Katie, and thanks for sharing your knowledge and joining us today.
Happy to help.
Maybe.
Okay, awesome. We'll chat with you later. Thanks
Sounds
so
good.
much for coming today. Okay,
Bye, Katie.
bye-bye. All right, and we're going to go to the next portion, which is on our financing. So Jen, what's happening in the mortgage world?
Not too much this past week. We're seeing, variable rates are definitely significantly lower than fixed, which is nice. We've got some inflation data that we're expecting to come in early next week, which will let us know whether or not, or a good indicator on whether or not the Bank of Canada will change their overnight lending rate end of this month. So we'll see what happens with that. I feel like the markets, the spring market is going to start earlier this year.
That's been the consensus around my colleagues as well. At our last networking group, everyone was feeling like we've got to get ahead of it.
Yeah, everybody who I've talked to has been really busy, so I can see. Yeah, I have been holding back. I was just a bit tired, and but I'm being pushed by my clients now. So you're going to get a lot busier, Jen.
Sounds great.
Yeah, we're sending you lots of people.
I love to hear it.
Okay.
One other question for Jen, though. Actually, the stuff going on in the States with the Fed, I've heard that's our Canadian dollars actually improved. Bond rates, I think, shifted a bit. There's concern around the Department of Justice and the Fed getting into a bit of a fight Is that gonna roll over to anything Canadian, or are we kind of again insulated from all of that?
I think it probably will, because it affects the bond yields. So that affects fixed rates.
Okay.
So there's been a bit of fluctuation, like 0.1%. We've seen fixed rates kind of go up, and then they get dropped back down that 0.1%, but nothing significant.
Okay. Remains to
Yeah.
be seen.
Yeah.
Do you know, it's funny, I wasn't going to mention that because I caught a bit of slack for being a bit political before, but it's, our economies are tied together and we have to be aware of what's happening in the
We do.
US. So
I don't think
great
it's.
question.
I think we need to speak to these things, even if it's somewhat political. We need to understand what's going on politically because it does affect us.
Yeah, for sure it does.
Okay. Thanks, Jen.
Okay, so let's talk about this week's stats.
All right.
Andrew.
So now we're in the second week of January, and so compared to last week, the first week of January, we've really taken off. But this is more. I mean, this is a lot of new listings coming on, but it's not. The 105 number from last week was really low. So 264 this week versus 105 last week. We've got 67 pending properties this week versus 51 the week before. 67 price decreases versus 32 the week before. And 49 properties expired versus 223, which would have straddled the beginning of the month, which is where we tend to see those. So no surprises there. Any comments, guys?
So I do have some buyers. I mean, they did comment that all of a sudden their search went from nothing to a lot of choice. So they're very happy.
Mhm.
And so I think we're going to see, right now we're seeing the numbers, what we were for the month of January last year. So, but I think we're going to go up above what last year was at.
I'm actually a little afraid because I've been relatively slow for the last couple of months, but there's been a slow burn of client interest that has been in the background. Like they're waiting for the right property to come up. They're waiting to get their home ready for sale. And I feel like the perfect storm is coming for me where I'm going to have all of my buyers ready to buy at once because the inventory is there, and all of my sellers all selling at once. And I'm going to be, even less hair than I have now because I'll be pulling it all out, trying to do everything I need to do this spring to keep everyone serviced. So it's going to be interesting to juggle, and I'm going to trust that these things flow in the right way. But I can see there's going to be, I think, like just the meeting, the high point is all coming.
I agree. I think it's going to be a really busy spring. It feels like more than normal. My buyers are contacting me and they're ready to go. And I have several subject to sale, so they need to get their place on the market and then find a place. So we're going to have a bit of a scramble this spring for sure.
Yeah. And I've got clients that have been waiting they wanted to buy first and then sell, subject to sale, and they've realized that's not a possibility. And they finally come to the realization and resolved to sell first and then camp if they have to until they buy. But they've realized that that's the only way they're going to actually get what they need to do.
Right, because you're more mobile when you're
Yes.
you're more flexible when you've already sold. Absolutely.
Your cash in hand. Yeah.
You've got the control. You know exactly how much money you've got in hand. Yeah.
So it's a really interesting process for sellers who become buyers to realize that they have to sell in order to buy. Like there's often they want to buy knowing what they're going to be going into, but because especially right now where we're heading into a faster market, it's not an advantage. I really feel we were at the bottom of the market last fall, like a few months ago, and it does feel like it's accelerating.
That was the time when there was no motivation because there's so much choice, but it was the time to buy. We will, hindsight's 2020. We don't know. Maybe we'll have a really horrible spring and prices will go down, but I've been more positive on it too. Glad to hear you are as well, Jane, and you as well, Jen. So I think it will. So there you go. What's this?
So the list to sale ratio is lower at 25.38%. And the reason being is that we have so many listings coming on the market compared to sales. And as we saw in the previous graph, our pendings were fairly similar, like within 10 houses of each other, but the number of listings was higher. So last week it was 48.57%. Okay, so net unconditional sales for the month so far is 74, and that's compared to January last year of 422. So we're looking,
Wow.
we're strong.
Are we? We're halfway through the month at 74. I mean, we're not
Well-
quite, and this would have been from Monday, this stat, right? So let's say we're a third of the way into the month.
I think we're going to
Yes,
have
you're
a
right,
check
though.
mark.
It is an accelerating. You're right. There's a swoop happening. The Nike swoop is going to happen, and we're going to see it accelerating in terms of sales. So by end of the month, you're right. We could catch up. This will be interesting to revisit at the end of the month.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that's my prediction. Everybody hold me accountable in 3 weeks.
So 422, you're going to be similar to.
Yeah.
Similar to last year. Okay.
So last January 2025, we had 1,172 new listings. We're at 310. Again, I think we're going to see the swoop. So just do it. And total active listings right now, we're at 2391. That's compared to 2396. So I
Wow.
think we're going to be above where we were
Totally.
last year.
By end of month, yes. Because I feel like our inventory is going to definitely go up faster than our sales will pull away.
Yeah.
I think the buyers aren't yet urgent, and they're going to be a little overwhelmed with new inventory and feeling like they've got selection. Once that starts to pull back, then we'll see these numbers change a lot. But that's in a couple months down the road, I think.
Yeah. So get in there early if you want to buy. If you don't have a place to sell, you're going to have choice right now, and you're going to have more competition as the spring moves on.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
Thank you very much for joining us. Andrew, do you want to close us out?
Yeah, well, again, thanks everyone for taking the time. I always hear from a few colleagues, from a few of our listeners, and thank you for spending your time with us at this time. We love it that you join us for this. We would like to hear more from you. Love it if you could like this show, subscribe to it, help it get further afield, help it get into the inboxes of those people who really could use it. Give us your comments, ask us for some advice offline, and by all means also give us some suggestions for future shows if you've got some ideas of what you'd like to hear. But share it with your friends.
Yeah. Thank you. So Andrew, how do people reach you?
So I'm with the Vibe Collective at Royal LePage, and you can reach me at 250-360-6106, and info@andrewplank.com is my email. Check out the website, andrewplank.com or realvibe.ca.
Awesome. And you have some news you want to share with us?
Do I?
Courtney?
Oh, we're not really announcing that one yet, but the Vibe Collective is back up and running. We were down for a bit with my business partner had retired had left the business. So we've got a new teammate. It's still early days, so we're not going to make a big official announcement just yet. But
Okay.
soon.
Okay. Jen, how do people reach you?
I am with Modern Mortgage Group through Dominion Lending Centers. My cell number 250-217-4925. Email is jen@jenlowe.ca, and my website is jenlowe.ca.
And you can follow her on social media at JLowe Mortgage Broker.
J-Lo.
Perfect. Thanks, Jane.
You're welcome. And you can reach me. I'm Jane. I'm at the Briar Hill Group at Remax Camosun. My number is 250-744-0775. You can reach me by email at jane@briarhillgroup.com, and visit the website for all of our listings at briarhillgroup.com. And don't forget to follow me on Instagram at realtyteacher_remax_. Victoria, and we will see you every Thursday at 9:30. Take care, you guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Peace out.
Have a great week. Bye.
Who says peace out?